One is the central problems of economy, and second is the three types of economic system, which include capitalism, socialism, and the mixed economy. And before that, let us see a quick topic. What are the different economic goals? So, the economic goals include, number one, the freedom. Freedom to choose anything. Freedom to do anything. Second, the efficiency. Efficiency means the input to output ratio. So if we are giving high input and getting low output, that means efficiency is low. If we are giving low input and getting more output from the same input, that means the efficiency is high. So the second important goal of the economy is to get more and more efficiency. Third is growth. Growth means an sustainable increase. The increase over previous period. If the production this year is 100, next year if this production is 101, then this is called positive growth. And there is other dimension also. The negative growth is also possible. Right? So if this year the production is 100, next year this is 99, then this is called negative growth. So growth both positive and negative. Equity. Equity is very, very important. Equity is basically that every person, including the person who is on the last street of the city, last house of the village, that person is getting all the basic minimum needs. Security. Very, very important. Security is protection. Protection from illegal things. Protection of property. That basically means the rule of law. Rule of law. Then stable prices. Stability is very, very important. In any country, if the things are stable in terms of prices, in terms of employment, in terms of polity, then there can be growth. So, what are the 6 economic goals? One is freedom, efficiency, growth, equity, security, and stability. Now, central problems of an economy. And why do we say these are the problems? These are the problems because to solve these problems, we are doing everything that we are doing in the economy. And why this is a problem? Again, this is the problem because there are unlimited wants. And so we have unlimited wants, but limited resources. So, to satisfy our unlimited wants from these limited resources, we have to make some choices. And making these choices, it creates the problem. And this is the source of the problems of an economy. And all the theory principles that we study is an exercise, is an effort to solve all these problems in such a way that the maximum satisfaction happens. So, we have unlimited wants and we have limited resources. That means we have scarcity. And in case of scarcity, we have to make a choice. We have to make a choice that how to utilize these limited resources in the most optimum manner. And for that, 3 kind of choices have to be made. The first choice is what to produce. The second choice is how to produce. And third choice is for whom to produce. So these 3 different kind of choices have to be made. We will study each of them in detail. So first of all, why central problem? This is a central problem because we have unlimited needs and wants and we have limited resources. So, what to produce and in what quantity? This is the first problem. That means, how do we allocate the resources? We have limited resources. So these resources should be utilized to produce what kind of goods? should we produce consumer goods? Should we produce capital goods? Should we produce perishable goods? Should we produce durable goods? So we have studied all these kind of things, right? So which type of goods are required to be produced? That is the question. Secondly, how to produce? So for that, what kind of technique should we deploy? And when I say technique basically means either it can be labor or it can be capital. So either it can be a human being or it can be the machinery which can be used as a technique of production. And third question is for whom to produce? Or this is the problem of distribution also. So how do we distribute? Who should get the production? Who should get the production? Right? So these are the three problems. Now, first problem, what to produce? So we have scarce resources, unlimited wants, and these scarce resources have alternative uses. So how do we utilize these resources? Should we utilize these resources for producing consumer goods or for producing producer goods? Producer goods means capital goods, right? If it is consumer good, then should we produce single-use goods or should we produce durable goods? Again, in case of producer goods, should we produce single-use goods or should we produce durable-use goods? This is the question. Second, how to produce? Should we produce with the help of labor or should we produce with the help of capital, right? So, how do we produce? That depends upon minimum cost also. If labor is producing at the minimum cost, then we should prefer labor, otherwise we should prefer capital or machinery. So, either the production can be labor intensive or it can be capital intensive. These are the only two ways. And it also depends upon the availability, whether the labor is available or not, whether the capital is available or not. And it also depends upon their prices. If the cost of labor is high, then definitely we will not deploy the higher labor. Third question is for whom to produce? Who will get the final distribution? So, who is going to ultimately consume the goods? So, is it the person who really needs the product or is it the person who has the paying capacity or who is having purchasing power? Who will be that person? That is the question. And friends, don't worry. I am going to discuss this thing in detail in the coming slides. It might be feeling somewhat theoretical, but this is not. So overall, can we say there are three central problems: what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. What to produce means what kind of goods should we produce, and it mostly depends upon the consumer requirement. How to produce means the technique of production. Is it to be labor oriented or capital oriented? For whom to produce? That is, for which part of society this production should be happening. So, will it depend upon the income of the person or will it depend upon the availability of the resources? Right? So, these are the three central problems, right? Now, very, very interesting. So, these three central problems are the foundation of the different kinds of economic systems. So, we have the economic system called capitalism, socialism, and the mixed economy. And how do we determine those three kinds of economic system? Depends upon how these three problems are being solved. Or in other words, there are three different ways to solve this problem. So one way is through the capitalism, another way is through the socialism, and third way is through the mixed of both socialism and capitalism. So these three different ways of resolving these three central problems are called three different economic systems, right? So how the country's resources are owned and in which way the decision is made regarding what to produce, how to produce, and how to distribute. So that determine the type of economic system the particular country has, right? So first is that we have unlimited needs, we have limited resources, and that leads to the problem of scarcity, right? And because of that, we have three central problems. And what are those problems? The problem is what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. And these three problems can be solved with the help of either centrally planned economy or socialism, or mixed economy, or free enterprise or capitalism. So these are the three different ways to solve these problems. So first is capitalist economy, second is socialist economy, and third is mixed economy. Now coming to the capitalist economy. How do capitalist economy solve these three central problems? So, very crucial feature of this capitalist economy is that the private firms or individuals, they own the means of production. So, it is not the state, it is not the government, it is the private firms or individuals who have the primary ownership of the means of production, right? So, if they have the ownership, then they make the choices. They make the choices what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. What to produce. So that depends upon, like, depends upon the consumers, the demand. So it does not depend upon the need of the people. It depends upon the demand of the people. Or in other words, if, for example, I'm talking about a particular city. So in a city, there are lakhs of people, and most of them, they are in the middle class. So they need good housing, they need the basic facilities like water supply, electricity supply. So that is their need. So that is one category of product which can be produced by the capitalist, right? So capitalism, the capitalist economy or the capitalist firms, they can produce housing, electricity, and other requirement, right? But will they necessarily produce those items? That is dependent upon whether there is a demand. And what is the difference between demand and need? So need is what the person really needs, and demand is the person ready to pay for that? Need is the person needs a house, but the person is not able to pay. So that does not create any demand. That can be the need, but that is not the demand, right? So paying capacity is very, very important. If the consumer is ready to pay, that means demand, and only those kind of goods can be produced in the capitalist economy, right? And what kind of technique is used in the production? Only that kind of production method is used which reduces the cost and which gives the higher profit. Then, for whom to produce? Who will buy? Or who will get the final product? So the person who is willing and able to buy. That means the person is having purchasing power. So in the capitalist economy, where the private and the individuals are the owner, it is the consumer preferences who are deciding what to produce. It is the producer's profits which decide should we deploy the labor or capital. So at this point of time, producer will never think whether there is unemployment because of the high machinery or not. So producer will not go into whether deploying more and more machinery is beneficial to the society at large or not. Producer will go from his own profit motive only, right? And for whom to produce? The person who is having the purchasing power. It does not matter whether any person who is not having the purchasing power, does that person really needs the goods. So if a person really needs the goods, but does not have the purchasing power, then that person does not get the goods in the capitalist economy, right? What are the important features of capitalist economy? How do capitalist economy characterize? So first feature is there is private property. What does that mean? That any person, you, me, any company, they can own the property. How do they use that property? They have complete freedom about that. So there is freedom of enterprise. We can open any company, we can do any task, we can enter into any business, we can go into any job. So there is complete freedom. Third, there is profit motive. Most of the tasks that are done in the capitalist economy, they are profit motivated. Any capitalist company, they will produce anything only if there is some profit, right? They will for example, deploy the resources in the most efficient manner. They will try to minimize the cost, and they will try to maximize their profit. So we have the companies like Reliance who try to minimize their cost by doing research and development, by increasing the efficiency of the labor, by decreasing the cost of input, and by increasing the prices. So what are the side effects of profit motive? The side effect can be that in a bid to increase the profit, the Reliance can give low wages to the laborers. They can increase the prices for the consumers, right? So their ultimate profit is what? Their ultimate profit is profit motive. So they can increase the prices for the customer and they can decrease the wages for the consumer. But they will ultimately focus upon their profit only. So these are the side effects. Then, good thing is that there is competition. Everyone and anyone is free to do anything. So there is a positive sense of competition. Everyone is trying to do their best. They innovate, they compete, they do hard work, they bring new and new ideas. So there is a good production of goods. There is a race to produce goods at the low cost. Then importance of markets and prices. So who decides the prices in the capitalist economy? It is the factors of market or demand and supply, right? So it is not the government. It is not the government who will decide the prices, but it is the demand and supply rules. What does that mean? That means if the demand of some product is high and supply is low, then prices will rise. For example, the tomato prices keep rising again and again. Why? Because at times the supply is less, but demand does not reduce. So government cannot intervene every time. In the capitalist enterprise, government can never intervene, right? So it is the demand and supply which decide the prices, not the government. Then absence of government interference. This is very, very true. There is a complete absence of government interference. And can you give the example of capitalist economy? So example include United States of America and most of the Western countries. They are following the free capitalist system, right? So what is the role of government in the capitalist economy? So the government primarily has the role of rule making. So in the earlier discussion, we just saw that government do not interfere. But definitely, government makes some kind of ground rules. Why those kind of ground rules are required? So we discussed in the economic goals that there has to be stability, there has to be protection, and there has to be equity. So to ensure stability, protection, and equity, the government has to make some ground rule so that there is a competition which is healthy. The competition does not turn out to be negative competition. So that everyone has an equal playground, whether this is the son of Ambani or this is the son of farmer. Everyone has an equal playground, right? So there is a rule making. This rule making balances different stakeholders. For example, the balance between the consumer and the producer, balance between the person with low capital and with the high capital, balance between the laborer and the owner of the company, right? So different stakeholders, their interest is balanced. The government ensures that they have optimum benefit. None of them is exploited, right? So there are many rules. For example, rule regarding the seat belts, right? So this ensures the customer safety. However, it can increase the cost of production for the car companies. No job discrimination based on caste, race. So that increases the equal opportunities for all the people. However, sometimes it can be like adversarial for the company. And nowadays there is deregulation, right? There is deregulation, right? The government is reducing the number of rules it forms. And in capitalist economy, maximum time this is deregulation only. Regulation is minimum. So regarding capitalism, there are some pros and there are some cons. So what are the pros and cons? First, the good thing is that there is incentive to be rich. So everyone can fight for profit making. And how do they bring good profit? They bring good profit through innovation. They try to bring new ideas. So that increases the efficiency of the company, right? So firms have efficiency. The economy is efficiency. The utilization of economic resources is very efficient, right? So firms have efficient. And consumers are free to choose the products that they desire. They can choose anything. There is no restriction that they can choose only particular thing. If they are having the purchasing power, they can buy anything. So if you have the purchasing power, you can buy a charter plane. It does not matter that do you belong to a village or do you belong to a particular caste. It does not matter at all. Then prevents large bureaucratic interference. Definitely, this government interference is a big problem. This basically defies the economic logics. So, for example, because of the government interference, at times certain power plants have been established in India even if they were not feasible. For example, the Unchahar power plant in Uttar Pradesh. That power plant was established just because of the government interference. However, going from the economic logic, going from the cost-benefit analysis, that power plant is completely loss-making power plant, right? So, because of the capitalism, there is no bureaucratic government interference, and that increases the profit, that increases the efficiency. Then it is better than other alternatives. Yes, if we see today, almost every country is following capitalism. Some countries are completely capitalistic and some are partially capitalistic and some are having a bit of capitalism. Even the countries like China, Russia, they used to be non-capitalism country, but even they are now following the capitalism to a large extent, right? What are the issues with the capitalism? What are the issues? So, the issue is that when they are trying to make profit for everything, at times, a few companies, they grow very big. And when they grow very big, they start making decisions as per their own benefit, ignoring the interest of large number of people. So they decide the prices of the goods, they decide the wages of the consumers, the laborers, they decide how much tax they should pay to the government, they decide the quality of products. So that creates the problem. So the firms gain monopoly and they exploit the consumers, they exploit the laborers, they exploit the government also at times because they form a lobby and they pressurize the government. So this monopoly becomes the problem. So this is the first problem. Second is, they also pay the low wages. Third, they also lead to externality. What is the meaning of externality? That they produce the goods and services without keeping in mind the interest of the environment. They spread the pollution. For example, in one of the place in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu, there was Vedanta plant and that plant has been spreading lots of pollution and it was ultimately shut down by a court's decision, right? So these externalities can actually damage the environment. Then it tried to create inequality. Why inequality? Because in the capitalism there are two classes. One is the owners, another is the workers. So workers are getting only wages, which is fixed. Owners are getting the profit. So owners are actually increasing their wealth at the cost of the laborers. So at a point of time, it creates huge inequality. And there is no surprise that in all the countries, including the developed countries, there is huge inequality. The difference between the rich person and the poor person, that becomes more and more, and that leads to different kinds of class wars, civil wars, protest against the government, instability, and finally a big source of tension. So this inequality is a big problem. Then it is prone to booms and bust. Booms and bust, yeah. So you might be remembering the 2008 financial crisis. Why that financial crisis came? Because of the free hand that was given to the big real estate companies and the bankers. So bankers used to give a lot of loan to the public in the US. And when there was a real estate crisis, the consumers were not able to repay the loan to the bankers. And because of that, the entire economy of USA came down. And because USA is the biggest economy in the world, the entire world economy was affected, including the country of India. So this is prone to boom and bust, right? So let us quickly see what are the pros. So pros is there is incentive to be innovative. The firms are more efficient. The consumers can choose whatever they want to choose. There is minimum government interference, and it is better than other alternatives. What are the issues? What are the cons? First is monopoly, which exploits the consumers. Second, they can pay low wages. Third, externality, for example, pollution. Fourth, inequality, the difference between the rich and poor. And fifth, there are cycles of boom and bust, which actually impacts the large number of people in a very adverse manner. So this is about the capitalism, right? I hope now this capitalism concept is very much clear to you. Now, the second economic system through which we can solve the economic problems is the socialistic system. And in this system, how do we solve the problem? First of all, let us understand that how it is different from the capitalism. So in the capitalism, it is the private person who is having the ownership of the property. But in case of socialism, it is the government who is having the primary source of ownership. So it is the government who is the owner of everything. Government has the primary hand over everything. So it determines what kind of production has to take place. It determines what kind of goods have to be produced. So what to produce is decided by the government. Then, since the means of production are owned by the government, therefore, the government, it decides that what technique of production can be used. So government takes care of certain requirement. For example, it takes care of the employment requirement, it takes care of the pollution and everything. So they deploy more number of labor if they feel that joblessness is there, and they deploy less number of polluting machines just to take care of the environment. So they are much more sensitive. They go beyond profit making. They take care of the other requirement of the society also, right? And who get the production? So it is the people who actually need the production. So the person who the government identifies that they are the needy person. So they may be the poor people, they can be the the person who are having the requirement, even if they don't have the purchasing power. What is the key point? The key point is that there is a need. So socialist economy, individuals are not permitted to own any property. The government plus the planners, they make the choices what to produce. So the government that decides that what kind of needs are there and what will be the mix of goods and services, right? How to produce is answered by input-output analysis and also by different requirements like employment, pollution, etc. Then for whom to produce? So that actually depends upon the distribution is done through state outlets, and it is the government who identifies that who will get the production. So what to produce? Government preference. How to produce? Government and employees. And for whom to produce? Government preference. Can we say that? Yes, definitely we can say that. What are the important features of socialist economy? It includes, first of all, the collective ownership of means of production. When I say collective, that means mostly it is the state. So state is representing the collective ownership because the state is owned by everyone. So there is no private ownership, there is collective ownership of the society. Social welfare objective. As against the capitalism, here the primary objective is social welfare, not the profit motive. Third is central planning. There is some kind of centralized planning so that everything can be controlled. Reduction in inequality. Definitely, when everyone gets a chance to have the share in the production, then there is reduction in the inequality. There is no profit motive. The social welfare motive is at the highest. No class conflict because there are no two classes. All the classes are equal. Therefore, there is no class conflict, there is no civil war because of the different inequalities. So, in the socialist economy, all means of production are belong to and they are managed by the state for the welfare of people. There is equality of employment and opportunity. The resources are allocated by the central authority. There is no private sector, and the examples include the China and USSR, right? Now, but even they are not completely socialist economy. Now they are kind of mixed economy. What are the issues? So, primarily it might seem that socialism is a good system, but that it also has some issues. So there are two sides of every coin. Similarly, in case of socialism also, this is not free from criticism. So what are the problems? The first problem is that it creates the distortion and there is no price signal. What does that mean? So that means basically, since anyone who is having the need can get the production by the government, so there is no demand supply logic working over there. That means the price incentive is gone. So anyone does not have any incentive to produce because the person may not get extra prices if the person gets extra production. Since the prices are not decided by the forces of demand and supply, therefore the person will not get the optimum price. Who decides the prices? So it is the state, the government who decides the price. It is not the consumer, it is not the demand and supply, it is not the market. So when government is deciding the prices, then the producer, they do not have the complete motivation to do their best, efficiency, because even if they produce their best, still the prices will be determined by the government, right? For example, in India, the oil production, the oil prices are actually completely controlled by the government. So oil companies, they know that their production will be sold at a price which is decided by the government. It will never be sold at the price, at the market price. So they do not have the motivation to be more efficient, because even if they are more efficient, even if they reduce the cost of production, but still the prices may also be below the cost of production. So the prices are not determined by the cost of production, but depends upon the other factors which the government takes into account. So this price signal is distorted and there are reduced incentive, and because there is no much motivation to work, therefore the prosperity is also reduced. So in the long term, the feasibility is low, and there is no wonder why the countries like USSR, they did not succeed. So in 1990s, the USSR fell down, and ultimately the world has to embrace the capitalism at large. So these are the problems associated with the socialism. So overall, can we have a quick analysis, a quick comparison between capitalism and socialism? So in capitalism, the ownership lies with the private firm. In socialism, the ownership lies with the government. In capitalism, it is the market prices who are deciding the equality. In socialism, redistribution is primarily done. The prices are determined by supply and demand in the capitalism, and here there are controls. The government decides the prices. Here the market incentivizes and encourages the firms to cut the cost because that increases their profit. But in case of socialism, there is fewer incentive. Therefore, the government PSUs, public sector undertaking, they have losses. There are limited taxes because the government spending are lower in case of capitalism. But in case of socialism, the taxes are very, very high because the government expenses are also very, very high. In capitalism, healthcare is left to the free market. That means it is the corporate sector which takes care of the healthcare. The healthcare is not free of cost. But in case of socialism, it is dependent upon the government. So government can provide it at free of cost, right? Then what are the problem with the capitalism? The problem include inequality, market failure, that is boom and bust, and monopoly. These are the three major problems. Inequality, market failure, and monopoly. In case of socialism, it is the inefficiency and it is the no incentive. What are the advantages of the capitalism? So there is dynamic economy, there is incentive. What is the advantage of socialism? There is equality and it overcomes the market failure because government has complete control. Now comes the mixed economy. So we have seen that neither capitalism nor socialism is prone from failure. Both have their own issues, both have their own problems. So which system is best? None of them is best. It is a combination which is used at most of the places. Even the countries like USA, they are said to be the capitalist country. But are they really capitalist country? Are they not the countries who spend maximum amount on the social welfare? Are they not the socialism countries? They are. If we see practically, they are the largest socialist nations. They are the countries who provide the maximum amount of spending for their own people. They raise lots of taxes from the government, from the people, and they spend that amount in the free healthcare, in the free education, and lots of free facilities to the people. So it is a mixed economy, which is the ultimate solution to the economic system. So what is the mixed economy? So in case of mixed economy, it is the role of both private sector and the public sector, right? So some of the resources are allocated by the government and rest are done by the market. But what will be the proportion of government and what will be the proportion of private is decided by the government. So ultimately it is the government who decides that what will be the role of private. But definitely there is the role of private. Unlike the socialist countries, there is no role of private company. So most of the decisions are taken based upon the market. However, the government plays an important role by controlling the market. So in case of mixed economy, what to produce is decided by both the consumer preferences and the government. It is a mix. So the essential goods, they are decided by the government. For example, in India, if we say India is a mixed economy, there is no doubt India is completely a mixed economy. So in India, the public distribution system that supplies essential goods. So the food items, the essential items like pharmacy, water, gas, oil, they are mostly, controlled by the government. Their ownership mostly lies with the government. So you see the energy sector, you see the Food Corporation of India. The companies in the energy sector, if you see the companies like NTPC, Oil India, ONGC, IOC, all of them are completely owned by the government because they are the essential services. And rest of the services like telecom, like FMCG sector, they are mostly controlled by the private sector. So it is a mix. How to produce? It depends upon both the profit making and the government. So the government gives the incentive to the companies to buy less machine and employ more number of people. For example, in recent years, the government is giving some kind of reimbursement to the public provident for the provident fund contribution that is done by the private sector. So government incentivizes to increase the jobs and also taking care the efficiency which is given by the machines. So government tries to balance the role of machinery as well as the labor. For whom to produce? So that is again the essential items are given based upon the need through the system like PDS, free healthcare, like through the free healthcare act, free healthcare scheme which India has like Ayushman Bharat, and there are most of the items which are given based upon the purchasing power. For example, a car is based upon the purchasing power. It does not based upon the need, because it is not the essential item. So in the mixed economy, the public sector is responsible for supply of the essential goods, and private sector is responsible for whatever goods are in demand, consumer demand. India is a mixed economy. What are the features of mixed economy? It has coexistence of public and private sector. There is individual freedom and economic planning. Economic planning is basically done so that the government controls even the private sector. So government do not eliminate the private sector, but government controls, because ultimately the welfare of the people has to be kept in mind. So the anti-competitive practices of the corporate sector, anti-social practices of the corporate sector, they are curbed. And there is certain kind of rule making so that there is ground level playing field and everything. And then there is price mechanism. Definitely at most of the places it is a price mechanism. So here we can see the two different extreme points of a spectrum. On the one hand, there is pure planned economy, where there is completely government interference. So it can be the countries like North Korea, right? And there is the countries who are having the socialist leaning, China, Venezuela, right? Then these are countries who are having the capitalist leaning, France, Sweden, right? So they are the mixed economy, and India is also part of the mixed economy, right? And finally, we have pure free economies like USA, right? Even in USA there is capitalist leaning, but definitely there is some kind of socialism also, right? So these are the different examples of different countries. Now these three systems we have seen, and there is another classification of economy based upon whether there is government interference or not. So one is free enterprise or unplanned economy. So free enterprise means the economic decisions are completely based upon the entrepreneur's choice, and decisions are taken by the consumers, right? What will be the consumption? That decision is taken by the consumer. There is no central authority to coordinate, guide or drive the economic activities. It is full-fledged economic democracy. So in democracy, everyone is free to do whatever they want to do. So it is having completely economic democracy. The businessman can take any decision. And the countries like USA, they are the complete free economy. Planned economy is something where there is a central authority who chalks out the entire plan. What will be the role of private sector, what will be the role of government sector, how the different taxes will be levied, what will be the prices, everything, right? So overall plan has to be there, and there has to be some planning authority, and they decide that what should be the optimum utilization of resources and what will be the maximum rate of economic growth, and everything is actually completely planned. So this is centrally planned economy, where there is ownership of industry by the government, right? There is no invisible hands of market, that is, the prices are mostly determined by the government only. 5-year plans are there, for example, in the USSR, and in India also it used to be there. The firms are inefficient. We have seen the socialism, because there is no incentive. Bureaucracy is there, and lack of freedom is there, because there is some kind of control, and innovation is difficult. So somewhat this centrally planned economy is being implemented in the socialist countries. The socialist countries are actually centrally planned economy to a large extent. Then coming to the next classification of economy. So next classification is based upon the trade relations that an economy has. So there are certain economies who are who are not interacting with the outside world. They are producing, they are consuming, they are doing every kind of activity inside the country only. And then there are other countries also who are completely open. So we have two kinds of economies. One is the closed economy and another is the open economy, right? So closed economy and the open economy. So what are the features? Let us see. So here we can see there is consumption, production, saving, investment. Everything is happening inside the country only. There is no interlinkage with the outside world. So in a closed economy, there is no export, no import from the foreign country. There is no selling, buying of shares, debentures, any financial instrument with the foreign countries. They neither borrow no land from the foreign countries, and their residents, they do not work outside, and the outsiders, they are not allowed to come to the domestic country. So what kind of countries they are? So can you give some example of the closed economy? So example include the country like North Korea. So why do economy become closed economy? So it depends. For example, North Korea is having certain kind of issue with the USA. So USA has put all kind of bans, and North Korea thinks that USA is invalid, and therefore the North Korea has limited interference with the world also, because even if the North Korea want to have the linkage with the other countries, even then the USA is having huge influence upon the other countries. So you can see the example of even Iran. Iran is to a large extent a closed economy. And in fact, many economies immediately after their independence, after the decolonization in 1950s, they remained closed economy, including India. India was not completely closed, but to a large extent it used to be closed economy in the 1950s. Because India, they think that East India Company through its trade relations, it became the reason of India's occupation by the Britishers. Therefore, immediately after independence, the India tried to remain self-sufficient by establishing no relation with the outside country. But in 1990, this situation altered. The world community realized that if we don't work together, then we can't ensure the best utilization of the resources. And even India opened its economy through the liberalization, privatization and globalization effort in 1990, right? So in 1990, most of the countries, they became open economy. There was a wave of globalization. And how this open economy works? So in the open economy, there are export, there are import. The countries are investing in each other's countries, and the countries are also consuming each other's products. Right? So there is export and there is import. There is buy and sale of shares from the foreign countries and to the foreign countries. There is lending, and the people go outside and the people come from outside. So that is happening with the country like India also, right? Because about capital formation, and inside the capital formation, we will discuss the concept of gross capital formation, the gross fixed capital formation, GFCF. This is called GFCF, right? Then we will also discuss the concept of incremental capital output ratio, right? So this is very crucial. This concept is related to efficiency of capital, that how much efficient this capital is, right? And we will also discuss about the savings rate, and we will also discuss about the investment rate. So these are the four concepts that we are going to cover in this particular session. So now, first of all, what is capital formation? And before we discuss the capital formation, what is the meaning of capital? What is the meaning of capital? So, do you remember the four factors of production? So, out of those factors of production, one of the factor is the capital, right? So, I hope that you are able to interlink. Now, what is this capital? The capital is the amount of money that is put into business, and it is the blood of the business, right? So the amount of money that the businessman or the entrepreneur puts into the business, that money is called capital. Now, what do we do with that capital? What do we do with that capital, and what is the source of that capital? So first, what is the source of that capital? From where the businessman or any person is able to make out this capital? So the answer is very simple. This capital comes from the savings. So if you want to start a business, you will need some capital, and that capital, the capital that you are putting from your own pocket, right? That is nothing but the saving. I am not saying that the amount that you raise from the market, the amount that you borrow from the bank, that is a loan. The amount that you raise from the market, that is a share capital. But this capital is the capital which is put from the saving. And how do these savings come? So saving is nothing but the amount of income that a person earns minus the amount that is spent. So for example, 1000 rupees is the income of a person, and out of this 800 rupees is spent. So this 200 rupees is the savings, and this savings is invested into the business, and when this is invested into the business, this is called capital. Now, what do we do with this capital? So the first question was, what is the source? Now the question is, what do we do with this capital? So with this capital, we buy some assets or capital goods which are used for production process, isn't it? So this will be used for buying some capital goods or assets which are further used for producing anything. For example, I want to manufacture the wheat atta, so I will have some machinery, right? That machinery will be converting the wheat into the wheat atta. So that machine is bought from where? That machine is bought from the capital that is invested by my pocket, from my pocket, right? So this is the capital, right? And how this capital formation takes place? As and when we acquire more amount from the saving and we invest that amount into the business in the form of capital goods, right? So that process is called capital formation, right? So this capital formation is very, very simple. So in the slide you can see that this is a saving, right? So this is a saving. This goes to the bank, right? Or your own pocket. So either this is coming from the bank, this is the savings of some other person, or it is the saving of your own self, right? So in the overall context of economy, it is a saving only. So it can come into the business either from your own pocket, or it can come through the bank. When you're taking from the bank, this is in the form of loan, but still it is a saving of some other person, right? So this comes to the bank, and then it is called investment. And from this we produce the machinery. So these are the machinery we produce. We make the building, we buy the transport vehicles and more machinery, right? So you can see this process of capital formation. Now, capital formation simply means increase in the real productive assets. Productive assets means the assets which are responsible for production. So the assets which are responsible for production, they are called productive assets, right? Which leads to more production. It is that part of national income. Again, this is part of the national income which is retained for use in the further production. So do you remember, if you go by the expenditure method, there are 4 components. The first component is the personal expenditure. Then we have the government expenditure. Then we have the investment. And then we have the net export. So this I is nothing but the capital formation, right? So investment. So the term investment. So there are 2 different terms. One term is the capital formation. Another term is the investment, right? So capital formation is actually this entire process. And inside the capital formation, this investment also comes. And sometimes we also use this investment and capital formation interchangeably, right? So what is investment? Investment is the process of expending the amount on acquiring the capital goods which result in the capital formation, right? So investment is part of the capital formation. The investment process is part of the process of capital formation. Investment is one of the part of the capital formation. Another part is basically the savings and channelization of savings to the business from the household, right? So this can be in the form of capital goods or fixed assets. Capital goods or fixed assets means those goods which are used for the production of another goods. For example, the machinery, the building, the transport vehicles, right? You take the infrastructure, for example, road. So that is also part of the capital goods, right? So if any company is constructing the road so that its factory can work smoothly, that road is also part of the capital goods or fixed assets. They are also called as fixed assets, right? For example, equipment, machinery, tool, assets, etc. Right? I hope the concept is very much clear to you. Now, what is gross capital formation? What is gross capital formation? So the word gross, this is a very technical word. So the word capital formation was a loosely defined word. That was not technically defined word, but this gross capital formation is the very technically defined word. So you need to be careful about it. And this definition has been given by our central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, and it says that the gross capital formation or GCF refers to the aggregate of or the totality of gross additions to the fixed assets, that is gross fixed capital formation, right? So this is one term, gross additions to the fixed assets, and this term is called gross fixed capital formation, GFCS. This term we will discuss in the next slide in detail. And second is the change in the stock during the counting period. So now which stock we are talking about? So for example, there is a construction company, right? This construction company is involved in the construction of the buildings. Now, the buildings which have been constructed by this company, some of them have been sold and some of them are still lying in the stock. So, the buildings which have been sold, they become part of the item number A, the gross fixed capital formation, because someone has already purchased that building. So, that becomes part of the gross addition to the fixed assets. So, those buildings have started being used as the business place or for the production process, but this stock, the buildings which have not yet been sold or not delivered to the another person, these buildings are not being used in the production process, but still this amount has been invested, right? So this is called stock, right? So this stock of building, we take care that if there is a change in the stock, so change in the stock, so for example, if the stock on 1st of April 2020 is 10 unit and on the year end, that is on the 31st of March 2021, this stock is say 15. So that means 5 additional production has taken place. So this 5 will also be part of the gross capital formation, and it can also be the otherwise, that is this is also possible that earlier this was 15 and now this is 10. That means minus 5. That is minus 5 is the addition to the gross capital formation. So this is how we calculate this change in the stock during the counting period. Now what is fixed asset? Fixed assets refers to the construction, machinery and equipment. I have already given various examples. Another term, fixed assets are produced assets fixed assets are the produced assets that are used repeatedly or continuously in the production process for more than 1 year. So this is very crucial. So fixed assets, to qualify, they have to be used repeatedly and continuously for more than 1 year. Now, gross fixed capital formation. Gross fixed capital formation. And before I discuss, I missed one point. So in this definition, fixed assets are the produced assets. So produced asset, this produced asset, what is the meaning of produced assets? So produced assets means the assets which have been produced artificially. That means the land will not be part of the fixed assets here. The land, although this is used for the production process, but this will not be part of the production process because this was never produced. We cannot include it in the gross capital formation. However, if there is some land improvement, we have improved the land by filling some material over inside the land, by improving the quality of land, then this becomes part of the capital formation. So land purchase and land sale is not part of the gross capital formation, but land improvement is part of the capital formation and gross capital formation. So this thing you have to keep in mind. This is very, very crucial. Now, gross fixed capital formation. So gross fixed capital formation is component of the expenditure on the GDP and thus shows something about how much of the new value added in the economy is invested rather than the consumed. So as I already told you, out of the 4 component from the expenditure method of the calculation of national income, this I is nothing but this gross fixed capital formation. So I is nothing but the gross fixed capital formation. Now it refers to the net increase in the physical assets. This is very crucial. We are talking about the physical assets. We are not talking about the financial assets. So if the company is investing in some shares or in some debentures or in some bonds, then we don't include that part in the as part of the GFCF. Only the physical assets are part of the GFCF. And when we say net increase means the purchase minus the sales, both are taken care. So purchase of new asset and sales of old assets. So it is quite possible that the old assets are being sold out. So that will be reduced from here because the asset which is being sold out from here is already become part of some other addition. That is addition of some other person. So that particular person may have added that here. So the purchase minus sale means the net increase in the physical asset, or this is also called as investment minus the disposal. So sales here means the disposal. It does not account for the consumption or depreciation of fixed as capital. So here we do not account for the fixed capital consumption, that is the depreciation. So we don't calculate the depreciation. That is why this is called gross. So this is gross because we do not reduce the amount of depreciation from here. So we do not reduce the amount of depreciation from here. That is why this is called gross, right? Now it is a macroeconomic concept used in the official national accounts. So I already told you that this I is nothing but the gross fixed capital formation. It measures the private and public sector investment is spent on the formation of fixed capital, which includes the land improvement. So I already discussed that land purchase and sale is not part of the gross fixed capital formation. It is just the land improvement, which is part of the GFCF. Construction of roads, railways, dwelling units, commercial buildings, new machinery, etc. So all this is part of the GFCF, and it may be done by the private sector or it may be done by the public sector. Who is doing this, whether the government or the private sector, does not matter, but this is being done in the economy. This is the very crucial thing. So GFCF means whether the investment is done by the private sector or by the government sector, both are included here, right? Now GFCF is called gross because the measure do not make any adjustment to deduct the consumption of fixed capital, that is a depreciation, from the investment figure. So I have already told you this thing. GFCF is not a measure of total investment. So this is not the total investment because only the value of net addition to the fixed assets or the physical assets is measured, and all kind of financial assets are excluded. What is the meaning of financial assets? For example, investment into the shares, debentures, the government bonds, or any other financial asset which can give the income, right? So all the financial assets are not part of the GFCF. Only and only the physical assets are part of the GFCF. The most important exclusion from the GFCF is the land sales and purchase. This thing I have highlighted multiple times even before. If we see the figure, recent figure, GFCF, it's a metric to gross investment into the economy, and it has declined from 34% in 2011. So 2011 was very, very high, to 28% in 2018, and this is further declining. This is a cause of concern, because if this is declining, then we can never have the investment-led growth. The investment-led growth is possible only and only if there is high amount of gross fixed capital formation. Now, what is the significance of GFCF? Why do we need to have good amount of GFCF? So an increase in gross fixed capital formation signifies increase in the investment in the fixed assets, which further translated into the high rate of economic growth in the long run. Obviously, if more fixed assets are purchased, that means there is more production. If there is more production, that means there is increase in the GDP, right? And this increase in the GDP means there is high rate of the economic growth. So this GFCS is very much required for high rate of economic growth. Generally, developing countries devote higher percentage of GDP to investment for the fixed capital. Definitely, because the developing countries, they are more concerned about the development. Now, capital output ratio and incremental capital output ratio. This is very, very crucial. Please understand this thing also very carefully. So before I move ahead, I am giving you 1 minute to think about what you already know about this, and then we will start discussion. So capital output ratio, the term, if we see capital output ratio, so this term simply means how much capital we require to produce 1 unit of output. So if we require, for example, 4 rupees for producing 1 unit of GDP, then rupees 4 divided by 1 is equal to 4 is the capital output ratio, right? So what does this indicate? This capital output ratio indicates the efficiency with which this 4 rupees is being used, right? The efficiency with which this 4 rupees is being used, the efficiency with which this capital is being put to use. So if we can produce this unit in rupees 3 only, that means can we say that capital is more now this production is more efficient? Yes, the efficiency is more, because now the 1 unit can be produced only in just 3 rupees. Earlier it was being produced in 4 rupees. So more the capital output ratio, inefficient is the utilization of capital, and less the capital output ratio, more is the efficiency. Can we say that? Yes, we can clearly say that. So capital output ratio means the amount of capital required to produce 1 unit of product. So we have taken the example, for example, rupees 4 is the capital required and 1 unit is the product. If more capital is required per unit of output, then the capital is less efficient. Thus, it determines the efficiency in the use of capital. So if rupees 5 is required to produce the same 1 unit, so definitely it is less efficient, because earlier the 1 unit was being produced in 4 rupees. Now the same unit can be produced in 5 rupees. So definitely there is inefficiency. Now, what is this incremental capital output ratio, right? So incremental simply means that for every extra unit, for every extra output, how much extra capital we require. So this is incremental capital output ratio. So incremental capital output ratio means additional amount of capital required to produce 1 additional unit in the economy, right? And if we require more amount of additional capital for 1 unit of additional output, so taking the same example, if we require additional output of 1 unit, right, then in case 1, that additional capital required is 3, and case 2, the additional capital required is 5. So which one is more efficient? So definitely this first one is more efficient, because in the 3 rupees we can produce one additional unit, and this 5 rupees is less efficient because we can produce additional unit in the less amount, so the more amount. So incremental capital output ratio, how do we calculate? What is the formula? So change in the capital or additional capital divided by change in the output. And when I say output basically is reflected in the form of the GDP. So GDP is nothing but the output. So this Y actually indicates the GDP output, right? And K basically indicates the capital, right? And I basically indicates the investment, the net investment, right? So K or capital K is the capital output ratio, Y is the output output GDP, and I is the net investment. So you can see in this formula the change in the capital divided by change in the output, right? And how do we calculate the change in the capital? So change in the capital as compared to the GDP, and change in the output as compared to the GDP. So I upon Y, so change in the capital is nothing but the new investment. So change in the capital is nothing but the new investment. So I upon Y divided by delta Y upon Y. So how much is the additional output? And this is nothing but the additional capital or investment. So I is net investment, or this is also we can also call it additional capital. So when we divide the additional capital by the additional output, this is giving us the incremental capital output ratio. So according to this formula, the incremental capital output ratio can be computed by dividing the investment share in GDP by the rate of growth of GDP, right? So this additional capital, this is actually reflecting the investment share in GDP. And this additional output is actually reflecting the economic growth rate, right? So ICOR is nothing but the rate of investment divided by the economic growth rate. The rate of investment divided by the economic growth rate. So as an example, if the level of investment as a share of GDP in a developing country had been approximately 20%. So if this is 20% over a particular year, and if the growth rate had been approximately 5%, so this is 5%. So this is 20% divided by 5%. So ICOR will be 4. So ICOR will be 4. So we actually divide the investment rate by the economic growth rate, right? So this is how this investment, this incremental capital output ratio gives us that how efficient our capital utilization is, right? From where do we find this rate of investment and economic growth rate? So the best document is the economic survey. So when economic survey comes, we will discuss this in detail. So incremental capital output ratio, the growth rate is investment upon ICOR. How does this formula come? So we already saw that ICOR is equal to the investment rate divided by the economic growth rate. So this formula, if we see, it gives us this figure, that if we bring it here and if we exchange it, then we get that the growth rate is equal to investment divided by the ICOR, right? So in 2011-12, when the investment rate was 34.4%, 34.3%, and the ICOR was 4%, that means the growth rate was 8.6%. Now when the investment is 27.8%, ICOR is 4%, the GDP growth rate is 6.8%. So there is a decline of 1.4% in the growth. So from 8.6% to 6.8%, there is decline of 1.8% in the growth rate because of investment decline of 6.5%. So earlier this was the investment rate, now this is the divestment rate. So from this to this there is decline of 6.5%. Now, so higher the ICOR, lower is the productivity of extra capital and lower is the inefficiency with which NEW is used. Sorry, this is the efficiency, lower is the efficiency. Low ICOR signifies high economic efficiency. In most countries, ICOR is nearly 3. So ICOR of 3 is considered to be good, and in India ICOR is slightly high at 4. So in India the average ICOR is 4. Now what to do if we need to increase this growth rate, right? So what is the economic growth rate? Is equal to investment rate divided by ICOR. So if we want to increase this economic growth rate, either we should increase this investment rate or we should decrease this ICOR. How to increase the investment rate? This investment rate can be increased from the domestic sources or from the foreign sources. From the foreign sources we can invite more and more FDI, and from the domestic sources we can encourage more and more saving among the people, more and more savings, less of expenditure, more of saving. So this is how we can increase the investment. How do we decrease the ICOR? ICOR means incremental capital output ratio. That is the efficiency of the use of capital. So this can be used by improvement in the technology, by providing the better business conditions, by providing the better infrastructure from the side of government. So if we have better technology, better infrastructure, ease of doing business, all of these will increase the capital efficiency, right? So that is why we require the better business conditions, ease of doing business, so that our incremental capital output ratio is increased and the efficiency with which the same capital is used can be increased. So in the same capital we can produce more amount of goods. Now, so ICOR is influenced by number of factors such as technology. So technology, if we are moving from 2G to 5G, definitely it will improve the capital efficiency. Skill of labor force, this is also very much required, and which in turn depends on the quality of education system and ease of doing business. So education has to be better, ease of doing business has to be better, so that more and more efficiency can be there and economic growth can increase. So can you see that how education, ease of doing business can lead to reduction in the incremental capital output ratio, which can ultimately result into increase in the economic growth rate. So these are the areas from where UPSC can ask the question. Please be careful. I will be showing you the previous year question, as well as I will also be showing you with, coming up with the practice questions. Now, savings rate. So what is saving? Very simple. The amount of money that I am earning, that is my income, minus my expenses, or the amount that is spent. So if I am earning 1000 rupees and I am spending 800 rupees, that means my saving is 200, right? So what is this income? Income is nothing but, if we see at the national level, this is GDP, right? So if we divide 200, that is a total saving, by the GDP or 1000 rupees, what comes is the 20%, and this is nothing but the savings rate, right? So the national savings rate, or in other words, simply the savings rate, is the amount of gross domestic product that is saved by the households rather than spent in an economy. So out of 1000 GDP, we have saved 200 rupees, right? Out of 1000 rupees of GDP, we have saved 200 rupees. It is calculated as the difference between a nation's income and consumption. So 1000 is the income and 800 is the consumption. So difference comes as the 200 rupees divided by the income. So 200 divided by 1000, that is 20%, which comes as the savings rate. It is a main source of government borrowing to fund public services and works and infrastructure needs. So What do we do with the savings? The savings that I have, I will put in the bank, and the government will take money from the bank and invest into the infrastructure. It will provide the public services, or even the private sector will borrow from there and put into the infrastructure. Ultimately, it comes to the economy as in the form of investment. So the same money from the supply side, this is called the savings, and same money when it is invested, when the assets are purchased, then the same money is called the investment. And it is indicator of nation's health, as it shows trends in the savings which leads to the investment. So more the savings, more the investment, and more the economic growth. So it is indicator of the good health of the economy. Now what is savings rate? It can be calculated by savings divided by GDP. I have already shown. So savings is 200, GDP is 1000, multiplied by 100. So what comes is the 20%. This is the savings rate. So savings in India, savings by the household sector, we are talking about savings by the household sector, and they have been going down. In 2012 they were 35%. Now they are almost half. So that is a cause of concern. That is a cause of concern. Now savings, one thing is there is savings, and one thing is there is investment. Please listen to this concept very carefully, right? So savings is the amount that has been saved, not spent, unspent amount, right? This is from the supply side. Investment rate is from the demand side. That is the amount which has been put into the fixed assets. So if savings is this 17% and the investment is 27%, so what is the source of this 10 rupees? This difference. So only 17 rupees are available in the domestic economy. So this domestic, this saving rate basically means the domestic saving rate, the saving rate of the household within the country. So they are saving only 17 rupees. So that money is being channelized into the economy, but the total investment is happening 27 rupees. So from where this 10 rupees is coming? So the source of this 10 rupees is nothing but the foreign capital, in the form of foreign direct investment, right? So the foreign capital, the FDI, plus the domestic savings rate, if we combine both, then we get the investment rate. Can we say that? Yes, we can say that. So please take care of this. These are some of the things which are not mentioned in the notes. So you will find many things, in fact, which you will not find a mention in the study material, because some of the things cannot be mentioned over there. They will be discussed along with the lecture only. So my suggestion is that as and when you are watching this lecture, please note down this discussion in your handout so that you don't forget in the future. And for revision, if you want to revise, we are allowing you multiple access, so you can revise it by increasing the speed of the lecture. What are the factors affecting the savings rate? Consumption pattern. If most of the people are consuming more and more amount of goods, they are luxury oriented, then savings will be reduced. So more the consumption, less is the saving. Wage growth. If wage is growing very fast, that means the savings also grow. Interest policies. If the central bank is offering more interest, then people are encouraged to save, because they can see that their wealth will increase. Increasing the wealth. If the wealth of the people is increasing over a period of time, they will save more amount. Increasing access to the credit, whether the people are able to get the loan from the bank. Rise in the labor productivity. So because when there is more labor productivity, there is increase in the wage, and when there is increase in the wage, there is increase in the savings also. So here we can see Harrod-Domer model, right? So this Harrod-Domer model, we can see that more than savings, more is the investment, right? And when there is more investment, there is high capital formation. And when there is high capital formation, more economic growth happens, because now the production can happen more and more. When there is more high economic growth, then it leads to more savings. So this is the virtuous cycle of savings and investment. the term investment rate, right? So we have already discussed the term capital formation, gross fixed capital formation, investment. So this investment rate is basically nothing but the calculation of the capital formation only, right? So investment rate, so this is a basically indicator, refers to the portion of GDP which is invested, right? So it depends, economic growth depends on the investment rate and the ICOR. We have already seen economic growth is equal to the investment rate divided by the ICOR. High the savings rate, high is the investment rate. This is very crucial. Economic survey has identified some of the things. This is the old economic survey. I am just giving you the figure because that economic survey gave some figures. That is why I have taken the old economic survey. So this survey highlighted that India has been going with the gradual decline in the investment and savings rate as compared to the mid 2000 when the same was at the historic high level. Now, can I ask you, what are the reasons of decline in the investment and savings rate? So one is the decline in the private investment. And why the private investment is declining? Because of the NPA crisis. Because of NPA crisis, the companies, they are struggling in the business. They are not able to get extra capital. That is why there is decline in the private investment. Households' savings are also reducing because of the economic slowdown. Twin balance sheet challenge, right? I already told you. How can we recover? So first we should increase the investment rather than the savings. So we have focused enough on the saving. We should focus on the investment. So how do we increase the saving? We increase the saving by the measures like demonetization. How do we increase the investment? By providing the ease of doing business, labor skills, labor reforms, land reforms. So all these measures can increase the investment. So we should focus more upon the ease of doing business. Government should also go for the public investment, and they should be conducive environment for the small and medium enterprises, that is MSME, because their investment is less but their productivity is very, very high. So we should also promote the MSME. Then we should also revive the banking sector, because if we revive the banking sector through the recapitalization, through the reforms, through the mergers, then definitely the credit flow will increase. And if the credit flow increase, then these companies will invest more and more amount, and our investment rate will revive. And when investment rate revives, it has a positive virtuous impact upon the all indicators, right? So I hope the concepts are clear to you. Thank you very much for watching this and completing this session. Thank you very much.